Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report. This is part 2 of our episode with the Honorable Premier, Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster. In the previous episode, we went very, very deep into health. We didn't even get to touch finance and economic development. So we know we have to honor the time slot we've been given by our radio partners. Actually, we tend to go over. So thank you, radio partners, for always being gracious. That's the best word, gracious with us. But it gets heavy and it gets so good. The conversation and folks really tend to enjoy and are glued to what's going on. We try to keep this one tight. We try to keep this one tight. But of course, you have the premier here. This is the man of the hour on so many fronts.
I don't like when you use that word. That's the second time you've done it.
I know, and I turned to you right away when I did it because I knew that was coming again.
Say levels.
Say levels, alright. I'm so literally, you saw when I turned around because I knew it was coming. But oh man, it's listen folks. The previous episode really brought some things to the forefront. I know there was something that you wanted to touch from there, Gleneva, so we're going to just deep dive into it. We're going to jump right in. Mm-hmm. Who's gone to the store lately?
I have.
Tell me about your experience.
Well, I want to jump back to your experience before we get to mine.
Go ahead.
And maybe we can speak about what's similar and what's not. You know, I listened earlier when you spoke, and for those who haven't heard the previous episode, when you spoke about, when you go to the store and you no longer look at your receipts.
No, I don't.
Because GST, you know where the GST is going. And I'm going to revert back to us saying that I had, a fall season where we still know that our dollars aren't dollaring. And so not all of us are in a situation where we can't look at our receipts. And I wanted to, just sort of be mindful of that, and that there are persons who are feeling the pinch, who are feeling those increases in their on their grocery bills, because again, our dollars are definitely not dollaring. How much has inflation affected the GST in terms of the actuals, the numbers that you're seeing? Because when you would have projected certain numbers, you would not have taken the current inflation prices into consideration. How has those numbers been affected?
Well, if you think about it, the GST, the rate is 13% for businesses that make 300,000 or more. They have to register. In terms of inflation, though, that has raised the cost of the goods. But what ends up happening is those businesses, though, they can claim back what they pay at the port. So the CIF values, cost, insurance, freight numbers, those are up because, the cost of shipping has gone up, the cost of supplies has gone up, cost of goods is up, cost of fuel has gone up because of the war in Ukraine, because, that's happening out in the world. Now, what we have looked at And in fact, we have a meeting coming up with Inland Revenue Department to look at that specific, what you just mentioned of it. Does inflation affect the return on GST? And it really doesn't look like it's a significant change in terms of what government gets as returns.
Okay.
Obviously, there will be a slight increase, but we looked at what we projected. We projected that given the numbers up until it started in July of 2022, that we should have raised in the 6 months of about $29 million. To date, we look like we'll collect about $28 million by November, through November, and then you got December. We do know that we've gone through kind of the slower season because after
Right.
the tourist season slows down.
September, October.
October tends to be very quiet, and then mid-November and December is when it picks up. So that's why. So we do know that if things go according how it's going, that by the end of December we should have met our target, maybe even a little bit more. So is that due to inflation, that small increase to the targets? You don't know because there are a lot of assumptions
Yes.
that go into these things. When you talk to the IMF and you talk to Cartec, they basically project based on previous what they think
Right.
it could be. And it may be that the going from 12% accommodation tax to 13% GST, which would be where you that percent increase through a tourism season that projects to be better than it was last year, that might be where the increase is going to be. So it's hard to say right now. Certainly, if you ask me this, at the end of the year, I would have a better idea because they would have looked at those numbers.
I like when our guests invite themselves back. So that's an open invitation. But, I think about it because I know that there are a number of items that may not have originally been excluded, or you projected to have received revenue from a number of areas, but because of the current economic situation, the global economic situation, if we think about things like gasoline, and a number of basic food items that were removed,
Definitely.
that the GST was removed from. But we're still hitting those targets, which is why I'm asking the question. We're still hitting those targets even though a number of revenue streams and avenues have been removed. I do question whether or not that is due to inflation, and that's kind of where that question was coming from, where the line of thinking was. And if it is, then is there some reprieve that people can look forward to outside of what has already been given? When you look at inflation, inflation is hitting the most basic of food items hardest.
Yeah.
Eggs, flour.
Yeah.
Again, it has to do with the direct effects of the war in Ukraine, because we know that's where a lot of the animal
wheat
feed
and
and wheat
from,
is produced, and potatoes. What else can people say? Because one of two things will need to happen. You either need to get a reprieve on one end, or you can look forward to a bump in salary. How do you see, or which direction do you see us being able to move in?
Well, in the immediate effect, the items you mentioned, there's no GST on those. Those are zero rated, and so that bump in that price on those would actually be due to inflation, supply, shipping costs increase, and things like that. So that we know, we can say that the increased costs you see on the shelf has to do with inflation and supply, because those are zero rated. However, we have done, as you said, removed the excise tax, and then no GST on gas, diesel, and liquid propane, because of that same reason. The cost of living has gone up, and so we're trying to mitigate. So we give these benefits, which has cost government a lot of money.
Definitely.
It's about $15 million we spent with, decreasing the cost of, putting in the $1,000 for domestic households for electricity, and continuing, those benefits. The $500 vouchers for those 70 and older, and people who are on public assistance, that we increased their benefits by 25% for the first 3 months. Now, we do propose that we will do another benefit to help with the cost of electricity. One of the things that we would like to do, and some of the other jurisdictions have done, like BVI and Turks and Caicos, is the fuel surcharge supposed to be a certain amount, and they have helped to give subsidies to decrease that, and the government covers the difference. Now, we have considered that, and we have asked ANGLIC to give us the numbers. As they said first it was supposed to be $1.23. They took it up to 70 cents, and then they're now saying it should be $1.05. So it would be prudent of us to know how they come to the calculations, and that is right, because I can't go to Executive Council with a paper and say I want to cover a subsidy for ANGLIC, the difference between what they're charging for the fuel surcharge and what it should be, without having the calculations correct. Because one, I'm going to get thrown out of Executive Council,
We don't
and
want
two,
that.
it would have to go to the United Kingdom for them to approve it anyway,
Yes.
and they're going to want to know the numbers. I haven't been able to get the adequate numbers to do that. So the other option would be what we did before, is to give another subsidy on domestic accounts, and that cost us over $7 million the last time. So if we come up with that, roughly that same amount again, we still have to go back to the United Kingdom and ask for this to be approved, because anytime you exceed what is your recurrent expenditure that is set at the beginning of the year, you have to get permission to do it, because we've exceeded our borrowing guidelines for the FFSD, which says you should only be able to borrow 80% of your current revenue. Your debt service should be no more than 10%.
And what's our debt service?
Our debt service now is 21%, so it's double what it should be. Our borrowing limit, which should be 80% of recurrent revenue, is now 173%.
Jesus.
And you should have in reserve 25% or 3 months of your recurrent expenditure. Well, when we look at the calculations, when we started out, it was only 1 day amount that we had
Stop
in
putting your
reserve.
premium, sorry.
Yes.
Was it a full day?
No,
Not quite. It's probably about 21 hours. But again, since then, we have had some increase in revenue above what we had predicted.
Right.
And so we are now able to say that we have some money that we've been able to hold in reserve.
Right.
But it's going to get wiped out. And the reason why it's going to get wiped out is because we're going to do those cost of living benefits. We're going to give some money to ANGLIC to help domestic households. We're trying again to get some food vouchers for the elderly. We also just extended the customs concessions, duty concessions on essential food items, and also on gasoline till the end of the year. And so now we have to do a supplementary budget, and we got to go to the UK and we got to say, we need you to approve this. On top of that, we have capital development projects that we got to now fund. The Blowing Point Ferry Terminal, and there were some areas of it that were not funded. The furniture and equipment, we have to get funded. The parking lot, package 2 of the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School, the new complex. Remember that one did not meet its completion date
Yes.
or completion. So we have to now pay for that. So that's going to cost us another, $3-4 million to do these things.
But
So,
what I'm gathering though
Mm-hmm.
is, if there's consideration then for these things, then that means we're in a position to pay for these things, make consideration for these things.
I'm glad you went there.
We can
Because-
approach for these things.
yes.
And that's important to know because we couldn't before.
Yeah.
I don't want folks to miss. I'm sorry, Glenn, if I have to go this again because I remember the first
No,
episode.
We're gonna do a timeout, and the reason I wanted to do the timeout and to allow you to do that is because I wanted it to be clear that we're saying that we have the funds to do it, and not that we're going to the UK to ask them.
That's correct.
Exactly.
Yes.
But last year, we would still have to do this stuff, but this time we would have to go begging and say, we need to
Yeah.
finish the high school, we need to finish the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal.
Uh-huh.
We don't have the money to do it, but it's got to be done because you can't have open up the ferry
No,
terminal
no, it's no
halfway.
Yeah.
You can't open up the school and you have the
Steel sticking out there in here. Come
Exactly.
on.
And so as you said, rightfully, we now have the funds that we can do that.
Right.
So extrapolate back to where the funds came from.
GST.
Well, you said it's growing sustainably together.
High five, Premier. That's it. I was waiting for somebody to use it. There we go.
Yes.
There we go. And that's growing sustainably together.
Definitely.
We went from a cash position of 21 hours. I'm
Yes.
not going to say, yeah, one
No,
day.
definitely.
We had 1 day cash.
Yeah.
To be able to say to our
Yes.
administering power, we are administering this tax. Anguillians are paying their way. We are making steps and strides to growing sustainably together.
That's right.
We need to open our ferry terminal with furniture and a properly paved parking lot. We need our students to go to school in a well-equipped building, not something that's halfway done. We need to provide some measure of subsidy
Right.
for all our residents because the rest of the world is doing something where energy is concerned.
That's correct.
We have the elderly among us that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
They have health concerns. We want to offer them free medical services and free health care. This is a good place to be. I think we're in a good place. I'm excited. This is the last episode I talk about the hope that I'm feeling. I think this kind of sums it up. But I don't want something to go overlooked because we're talking about subsidies. Can't this removal of the excise tax on fuel be a subsidy as well?
But it is a subsidy.
You said it.
It is a subsidy.
Because people will say that there are no subsidies.
No, because remember that at the beginning of the year, the budget was set with these monies coming in, right?
Ah,
And so anything that we do where we don't collect the revenue that was already budgeted for, where the expense is already put in place as part of your recurrent expenditure, you're gonna have to find some other way to make up that money.
exactly.
So it's not an easy thing. You know, when you're dealing with budgets, you basically projecting you're gonna make this so you can take care of that. And these are essential services. Government is not out there spending money willy-nilly. What government spends is essential.
Exactly.
Keep the hospital open and subventions.
Yes.
You got water, which we subventing every month.
Yes.
We got, you're paying teachers to
Yes.
teach our children. You got the police that you're paying for. You got fire that you're paying for. I mean, American Airlines couldn't come here if we didn't have to put money into fixing up the airport,
airport,
the
right.
way it is, or the terminal building, even
Yes.
though it's leaking, that
Yes.
we, putting stopgap measures in until we develop a new terminal building.
Yes.
We'll get to that in the economic development.
All right, we'll get to we get to all that.
This
But
sounds like the episode of hope and
this is the
excitement.
episode. No, for real, because
I am excited.
You touched on something, Premier, and I must give our PS and our PS in the Ministry of Finance. I keep telling people I work for the Ministry of Finance, and all these other ministries that's been taking my time. They said they're gonna build them for me. But you said something, and it hits home to me because I see the diligence with which I'm going to call their names. Mrs. Kathleen Rogers,
Yes.
Miss Marissa Hardin Hodge,
Yes.
Mr. Von Lee Harris. Harris
Yes.
is his last name?
Yes. Yes. He's the accountant general.
The accountant general, Mr. Kiel Connor, Mr. Lanny Hobson. Those five, I can call more names, but those five in particular, let me tell you something, Leniva. They wouldn't spend a bad dime.
That is correct.
No, they don't.
Especially if it belongs to the people of Anguilla.
If it belongs to the people of Anguilla, they ain't spending a bad
Exactly.
and they want to collect every dime too.
Yes.
And I see the care, the attention that they put into their job.
Yes.
When I tell you they take their roles and responsibilities seriously, they do. And I must shout them out because it's on the back of their hard work. I can message the PS anytime and she would have the answer. I'll tell me hold, and she'll jump on the phone and she has to get the PAS, or she has to get on to Mr. Connor, Mr. Hobson. No matter what's going on, they can pull it. That's proper accounting.
Yes.
And when I see people want to strip apart government's budget and want to see that they're lying here, they're doing this, I'm sorry, I get highly offended because I know what they are going through. Not a bad dime is spent.
That's right.
And we're now in a position where I can actually say that we're growing sustainably together. Like, that excites me because people think that England is supposed to do everything for us. And that's not the case.
No, definitely not. That's not what Ronald Webster led the revolution for.
Tell them again.
Exactly.
They think it was to get away from St. Kitts?
No.
That was a little part of it.
That was a little part
it's
of it.
It's to stand on our own 2 feet.
Exactly.
And we are actually coming to a place of grace where we can actually do that.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm excited for that. But can I?
Go ahead.
All right. You touched on economic development, Premier. We have all these things going on, but economy doesn't stop. It's more than tourism.
Yeah.
But I think we have some exciting things happening in tourism. I heard you mention the MOU with Altima.
That's correct.
What other projects are coming on stream? Because say one, say two. For me, I don't know if it's a builder's take, but there's money in concrete. I find when concrete is flowing, there's money flowing in the economy and it's building for things to come. So we have Altima. What other projects do we have possibly coming on stream? MOUs that have been signed.
Yeah, so first I want to say that our number one priority for economic resilience is the airport.
Okay.
So new terminal building, that's what we're working on right now. We already have an airport master plan that stretches for the next 20 years to develop the Clayton J. Lloyd International. New terminal building, taxiway, and then airport runway expansion. Okay. So that's all in tow. We got the funding essentially to do the airport terminal. Okay. Remember, the UK had promised us £4 million each year, essentially for 3 years. So that should cover it. And then the other aspects of it, we are talking to the UK about funding or helping to fund or giving us permission to borrow so we can fund the airport expansion, because that is important to the development of Anguilla. Yes. Without that, we're basically just going to be where we talked about earlier, skimming the surface, mostly underwater. Yeah. You said something earlier, which I want to, in the previous episode, you talked about, and you give the indication like pistons, you know, this and like a well-oiled machine.
Yes.
But what that entails is that we have to have more pillars than just tourism. And that's why we want to diversify the economy into fishing, into agriculture, not only for food security, but also, for export, but also to, to help our people find different avenues, financial services. So we have to get there. But MOU for the Altima Marina. There was an MOU signed in 2006. Then it was signed again in 2019. Now in 2021 we've updated it. I've spoken with the principals. They were here last week. We're looking at getting that project going.
Okay.
So Altima Marina is got marina plus luxury villas in that area down by Altima. And then we have the Rendezvous project, and that, we don't have the MOU signed as yet, but we've basically far along with that. And that's going to be a marina, a Waldorf Astoria hotel, and luxury villas. We also have the Savannah Bay project, which is going to be another hotel, luxury villas, marina village, and marina project on the eastern end of the island. And I'm excited about that because that's coming home. That's coming home. And so the people from Island Harbor and East End and Sand Hill, they don't have to drive all the way west end, to work. Yeah. They're going to be, going up there. And with that, that every MOU that we sign has to have a social project with it, and that's going to entail something that the people of Anguilla can look at and say, this came because we gave duty-free concessions for them to build the hotel or the marina, that this is a social project that is there. Whether it's a community center, whether it's an indoor facility, whether it's the Island Harbor, project with boardwalk, whether it's Annie Villas is another MOU that was signed, and they're building villas over in Shoal Bay, and that's they are into education projects, so ICT lab, which is a computer lab at the Vivian Vanderpool Primary School. They also donating to a business incubator center for the creatives. I mean, these are things that are happening, that are coming. Siblu is also looking at expanding, and so that's another tourism project. So I feel excited because I know these are coming. Cove Castles also, we do have that has an MOU that we're working on. We're doing some due diligence now that has slowed it down a little bit because of the war in Ukraine and Russian connections. We have to make sure that we meet the sanction requirements and that there are no sanctions against any of the principals. And that one, I know that is going to be fine, but you got to dot the I's, cross the T's, because we don't govern ourselves. Exactly. We have an administering power. Yes. And certainly it's unfortunate that there's the war in Ukraine, because it has caused a lot of issues, not only just that the fuel price has gone up, but also in terms of Russian or Russian connected visitors coming to Anguilla, because we do get some. Yes. We do get the big boat that used to come out there in Meads Bay. That ain't gonna come this time.
You don't get Eclipse. I know the name because I like staying at home and watching them pull up. And,
you did say that she was well connected.
I told you.
Not in that way. I need to clarify, not in that way, because of exactly where I'm going to go next. I know the Premier, he hesitated before he said financial services. Yes. And I know he hesitated because I have been a thorn in his side for the past few months. That's right. And I would not be able to go home if I don't bring this up. And so I have to. When COVID shut down the island, when there were no tourists coming,
yes,
one of the only way that we got foreign exchange into this island was because of the financial services industry during that period.
True.
It is no secret. The financial services industry is a small, very tight-knit industry. A lot of persons may not even know persons who work in the financial services industry. But one of the things that I'm very proud of, as someone who has lived in the BVI and who has connections in the BVI, whereas a lot of the financial services institutions in the BVI are foreign-owned entities, in Anguilla, it's quite the opposite. In Anguilla, the entities, the financial services entities in Anguilla, they're locally and wholly owned by Anguillians. What is being done to ensure the longevity of this very volatile, and we'll call a spade, a very volatile industry? We deal with a lot of external factors and a lot of external requirements that don't necessarily translate well in Anguilla. But what is your government doing to ensure that this industry, as volatile as it is, does not go extinct in the next 2-3 years?
And that's an excellent question. And the answer is not an easy one, but let's say that we value the financial service industry. But we are, non-compliant with the OECD. That's our regulatory body. We are now blacklisted with the EU. We were blacklisted. We were able to get off. We're back on because we have not been able to meet the reporting requirements of that body. And so with that came a lot of requirements to change legislation. So we got the new Business Companies Act. We got the the other one about company registry. So what has been required is beneficial ownership. The powers that be want beneficial ownership registries to be public. Right. But that doesn't work for the industry. It tends to be an issue. Now, so we did pass the law, but there's a area in it of concern that I did address today with the PS. We did get short-staffed because one of our compliance officer did leave kind of suddenly, and so we're working towards trying to fix the issues that you have. The other thing that we did when we came in, there was Anguilla Finance was getting subvented by the government. And we felt at the time, given the tight fiscal space, that we needed to use that money elsewhere. And so we said we would like for the marketing of financial services to be attached to the Anguilla Tourist Board because they marketed Anguilla for tourism. If we could, in a way, attach someone to the Tourist Board, then they could market our financial services. So far, we're working on it, but we haven't been able to find the right niche to fit that person or persons into that. But we are budgeted for it, so that will happen.
Okay.
So we are committed to that. The Financial Service Commission, we have made sure with the governor strengthen that so that they regulate the industry. And we are making sure that is bolstered up. We did have someone that was seconded from the BVI who was here working with them, who has now gone back. So we are making the efforts. We certainly need to work a little closer with the industry so that we know what they want and see how we can compromise and make it happen. But when it comes to compliance and regulations, it's a difficult industry to make it to the point. And the other thing that we're looking at right now is what type of products does financial services have that can attract businesses, entities from outside? Because one of the things we have found is Anguilla was good with captive insurances. That's kind of drying up some. Certainly the offshore banks that went out the window a long time ago. And then you have the anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism. All of those issues we have to deal with. And as a small jurisdiction, you have to meet the same requirements as a big country.
Except we don't. I'm just gonna say it. Except we don't. This remains. This remains again a thorn in my side.
So wait, hold on.
No, I'll say this because when you hear that we are blacklisted, and as the Premier said, we are blacklisted by the EU.
Yeah. And non-compliant.
By the OECD.
Yeah.
The reality is that there are a number of financial services centers in those areas, in those EU countries, in the administering power financial center of London, where they don't have to do any of this. And so
Why?
The question is
Why?
Why? And
Yes.
that's a rhetorical question.
That's right.
And we move on. But I do
You see, I
think
moved away from us when the satellite hits, I'm over here.
again in here we address the elephant in the room and we call a spade a spade. But I think it's important just for the listening public, for our viewing
definitely.
audience,
You're
so that
correct.
they can understand
It's unfair.
that it is a number of restrictive policies and measures that we are expected to meet, that those big financial centers in Luxembourg, in London, in
And
Switzerland,
Delaware,
in Delaware,
yeah.
that do not and are not required. And that's what I say. We are small, and it seems very unfair and restrictive that the smaller nations, let's call them what they are, and a lot of them are the overseas territories
Yeah.
that are expected to meet a lot of these requirements. That's our big brothers and sisters out there don't have to contend with. And I don't want to take up any more time on
No, I got a
financial
question there.
services.
You can't throw that out there, start this circus now and get to ask what I want to ask.
No, because there are too many clowns in that soccer. So
On that note, that's what's make you to leave that alone. But that's interesting though, because you know it's funny. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he mentioned Luxembourg, and I was like, yeah, one of the richest, if it's the richest country in the world, and something along that lines. And then, you know, I said, but what separates them from us? And he started to dive into some things as to what is free will and free reign, but yet there are constraints placed on us. Same thing, like I see why you didn't want to touch it, so I'm gonna leave that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that alone because here is updates and conversations from the Government Information Service, and while that affects us, that might get me a little bit heated now. And we got too many good things happening in the Ministry of Economic Development and in Finance here in Anguilla for me to go down that road just yet. We're gonna have a separate conversation on that. I think that's what we're gonna do.
I think that one is going to be after.
No, we have to bring it out there. I understand that you're in the industry, but there are some questions that have to be answered.
Bring in
because,
the FSC. You know?
yeah, let's bring them in and ask those questions, because I mean we saw a glimpse of this with FATCA and everything that was happening,
That's
and
right.
now things that you see. Yeah, I'll leave that alone.
There we go.
Other projects. We talked about stuff from the tourism side. Any other MOUs out there that the listening public might find interesting?
Well, gaming is one of the areas that we're looking into.
Okay.
We feel that that is a revenue stream that is possible. We certainly have to make sure we do it carefully, and we have to worry about the social issues that can occur because of it.
Right.
But if it's managed properly, and you know, the policy and then the legislation, you know, addresses who can enter these establishments, what is allowed, you know, then I think that we will be able to do it the proper way and the correct way. So casinos, you know, slot machines, you know, tables, I think it is. We have a set of tourists that they want to go and do this type of activity. So they'll land in Anguilla, and then they go across the sea and gamble. And so that's where they spend most of their money. And then they come back here, pick up their plane, and they go, you know. So, yeah, you know.
I have a real life experience with that.
Yes.
I'm not gonna joke. It was so funny. Again, I was working in the industry at that point in time, and this was an owner of a basketball team, an NBA basketball team.
Yes.
It was so cool. Like, I was there with the owner when they were talking about making a trade. Like, I knew the trade was happening when he was on the phone. He was saying, like, make the trade, because he's right there. But it was interesting. His son had just made 18, and he wanted to gamble.
Yes.
So he chartered a boat, went to St. Martin for for him to be able to gamble, like we're just over there waiting for them. It's his 18th birthday. He wanted to gamble and drink, and that's what they did, and the business didn't stop. So you are correct. This is not fictitious. People do come here for their rest and relaxation or land their plane here, but go to St. Martin and engage in those activities. It diversifies our tourism product as well.
That's correct.
We talked about medical tourism the last time, but gaming also opens up for other avenues, not just the slot machines and other things. Because right now, because nothing is regulated. If, like for instance, they had the boxing recently, like there was no way you can place a bet or do those type of things. Where gaming, gambling is concerned, for the lack of a better word, the only thing that we have is Madruka and the Caribbean lottery.
Right.
So lottery and gambling and that measure of risk is here. So it'll be interesting to see when the consultations come what certain factions of the community will say when this stuff already exists and they're going to St. Martin to do it anyway. I appreciate the fact that you mentioned those social safety nets, for the lack of a better word, are those areas of concern because we have to protect our people.
Definitely.
But like everything, it's a chance that you'll take, and I feel if.
Well, you said earlier, we got to increase our appetite for risk.
That's it. That's it, Premier.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
The Premier clarified what type of gaming, because in my head, I, just being devil's advocate today. I've taken your road.
Go right ahead.
I'm going, gaming, are we speaking casinos, are we speaking hunting? But I'm glad you clarified. We're speaking we're speaking gambling, we're speaking casinos. I remember being in the Bahamas a few years ago, and I know you kind of alluded to that in terms of who can enter the establishments. I remember being in the Bahamas a few years ago and walking through Atlantis Casino, and there were these big signs that said Bahamians and residents of the Bahamas are restricted and they cannot enter, they cannot participate in those activities. Is that one of those social protections that we are possibly considering as we look to, quote unquote, protect our people?
It is a consideration, yes. Or if it's not total restriction, it would be limited to a specific amount of days a month or something like that. But it will be limited to locals, correct?
So, Premier, I'm hearing all this. There's a lot of movement, and I have to go back to this. Please permit me, if I may.
Sorry. I want you to give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Because the reason I'm going through my mind is that this is going to take some revenue away from our boat owners. Because, I happen to have been in St. Martin on vacation over the midterm break. And on property, there was one of those gaming spots. And I would drive by to get to my unit. And a number of persons, a number of Anguillians that I have seen going to those recreational venues.
The terms.
No, I have
recreational venues.
I'm being very careful in how I say it, because I have as well indulged, but for recreational purposes. I go in, I go, listen, I'm not a gambler. I don't believe in giving away my hard-earned money personally.
Right.
It's just not for me. I can think. So I say, just as if though I would budget for entertainment,
Right.
I consider that my entertainment part of my budget. So that's why I call it recreational. Because for me,
you're a responsible gambler.
No, because I don't like gambling. I don't win. That's just the long and short of it. Is that I don't win, and so I hate losing my hard worked for money. But the reality is that a lot of Anguillians go to St. Martin to engage, whether recreationally or otherwise,
Mhm.
in such activities. So,
Right.
it was just thinking that, we're removing revenue from other areas.
They can still go because
No,
from
they're
what I
still going,
understand,
yeah, exactly.
like they have a specific chair, a specific time they play, a certain
Yeah.
dealer that they want to deal with. They got all kind of
Yeah.
things around
Do-
the
do-
activities.
Because in Angola, we
Yeah,
have a
those
thing.
idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always something. Yeah.
But in Angola, we have a tendency, if I'm not seeing it, then it's not happening. Type of mindset. Do you anticipate some sort of pushback from the Christian Council, the Evangelical Society, Association?
Association.
Yeah. Do you anticipate some sort of pushback from them as we look to expand in those areas? And how do you
Well-
plan to mitigate that pushback?
Well, I expect that there will be, constructive discussions, and that's what the consultations are about. Certainly, this has come up before. There was a consultation done in 2019 that they would have engaged persons from the Christian Council and Evangelical Association and other civic society groups, and the pushback was not as bad as you would think it would have been. And this was done by the previous administration, so I'm going based on the reports that I get from during that time. But certainly, I think that if you have adult conversations and constructive discussions, that these can coexist.
I
You know.
I agree. I mean, they're going anyway.
But like I say, we tend to go, if I'm not seeing it, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Even when donations do go to the church from those avenues. But,
Right.
You ain't gonna get me in trouble.
You see how she slid that one in?
Just like
Slid
right
that
there.
in.
You ain't gonna get me in trouble, and she's laughing and holding it in so people don't hear her on the radio. You good.
Yes.
But I get it. So here's where I want to go with this premiere. You smooth it.
You know, that's how they got it through in Puerto Rico. Just exactly what you said just now is how it worked. But I'm not gonna get in there either.
I ain't getting in there at all. I'm gonna leave that alone.
Yes.
But all that's happening within the Ministry of Finance, we have GST. We have a lot more to look at where the public purse is concerned. We have all these things coming on stream. In my limited vision, I am almost seeing a need to bolster certain units, our audit function, certain aspects, customs and immigration. I'm seeing a need for a bolstering, maybe some more staff, other trainings and stuff. Is there any room in the budget for training and stuff? I know that was taken out, not necessarily taken out, but adjusted previously. But there's a need for training. There's a need for scholarships and other things. Do we see that coming up again in this new budget?
Yeah, these are, because I've said that we've been under austerity measures since 2009.
Forever.
Yes, and it's time for us to start developing the human capital,
Right.
because that's where we need to be, so that, as I said, we're going to improve the framework, we're going to build up the foundation so that we are independent minded and thinking people. We got to get the human capital to that same level. And so yes, there is money for training that we want to increase that. We want to provide some scholarships because we had to basically take out, because of COVID,
Right.
we had to take out all of those people weren't traveling anyway,
Right.
and things like that. So we want to do that. We also want to make sure that we owe University of the West Indies money. We gonna, in our supplementary budget, we catering to pay them some of
Excellent.
those arrears. the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. We are going to pay some of the arrears that we
Paying our
have for
debt.
them.
Yeah.
We want to pay our debt.
We're growing
The-
sustainably together.
Yes,
That's it.
the deferred
I have to plug
salaries,
it.
the deferred salaries for public servants. We're gonna make the final payment
Oh, wow.
because and that came down from from like $30-something million over time. It's now we're gonna finish paying it off this December, so that's gonna be
Like
paid off.
you can't jump over that premiere. I think the folks listening would appreciate that one. You can't jump over
Yeah,
the fact that
yeah,
you
yeah.
are going to finish pay off those deferred
Yeah.
salaries.
It took too long, of course, but it will be done. So the deferred salaries will be paid off.
Right.
And then what we have done, as you would have said, you need to bolster some of these agencies. So like customs ended up getting regraded,
Right.
so that we the persons who have stayed in the service, that they can get what is rightfully theirs.
Right.
Increments are going to start up again in the coming year. So where you get increments because of where you're supposed to be in the service. We're going to start that up again. That was put on hold from about 2011. And so I think that the public service has done its work to keep the country going.
You've said that every time you sat in this chair.
Yes, during COVID, that was the group that was working, that was supporting their families and every family around them, their
Yes.
neighbors. It was the public service.
Yes.
They were the ones who could go shopping. I mean, the $1,000 that we were giving for unemployment and underemployment benefits, that couldn't go too far.
Right.
You got to buy food, you got to pay your light bill, you got to
Yeah.
pay your phone bill, your water bill. I mean, that was difficult times. So
Yeah.
the public service carried the country. We have to make sure that we see that and we take care of them.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think
Yeah.
that's going to make, and it's not that they're getting a bump, like some people would say.
No,
you
they're not
shouldn't-
getting bonuses. They're not getting, we're
They're
not.
getting what's owed.
They're getting what is due to them. That's correct.
Exactly.
That's correct.
I
And at some point, when we can raise the salaries, different, then we will.
yes.
But at this point in time, you don't want to just spend everything you got, because you see we have to use it to do these other things, pay our debt, pay for the cost of living benefits, which we
Yes.
want to do. The electric bills have gone up. People say it's because of GST, but it's not. I mean, it's because the fuel surcharge it almost doubled, right, from
Yeah.
45 cents to 70 cents.
Yeah.
And the intention is to raise it to $1.05. We want to make sure that we can protect against that by going towards renewable energy.
So
So that's why the hard push. That's why, this administration is out there on the limb pushing hard and saying we need to get an RFP, a request for proposals, get all the companies and developers to make their proposals. It goes through procurement. Procurement picks the one that has the best offer, that can do the job. They build the renewable energy farm. We get renewable energy that's going to decrease the cost. Every report that I've seen shows that you're looking at a cost per kilowatt hour between 11 and 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, I don't know where it will fall in there, but we got a Public Utilities Commission that's going to regulate the cost and of a kilowatt hour.
You're signaling into the next episode, and you didn't even know, because we have the commissioner here, Mr. Damian Harrigan, who's going to be on after you.
Okay.
And you did not know.
I did not know that.
But yeah, we're going in that direction. But now that you've touched Anglic, I have to, because I made this argument here, and I think Leneva is probably going to stay quiet on this, because she wears a lot of hats. I don't know if you know, but she's also the chair person of the Water Corporation of Anguilla.
Yes, I know that.
Okay, great, excellent.
I hope that you know that.
Because some people pretended not to know.
I'm not asleep at the wheel.
Okay, I thank you for that. So we have this.
No,
you're not doing that, Gleneva.
Yes, we are. Because I got a call.
You got a call.
That you made a call.
Yes, I made a call.
So I need to clarify that right here,
Okay, go ahead.
because obviously I didn't hear. Because there's also Monday Night Football that comes on, so you know,
Okay.
football is somewhat more interesting.
Okay.
So, I think a comment was made that that appointment had happened that very same night
Yeah.
under the cloak of darkness.
Yeah.
I want to take this opportunity,
Yeah.
don't need to cut you off, to clarify that the Honorable Premier would have known that I was made chairperson of the Water Corporation, because this was approved in EXCO
Yes.
during working hours.
That's
I
correct.
don't know where else it was supposed to happen.
Since earlier in October.
That's correct.
Good. So
Let's-
just
let's just put that to rest there right now.
there.
All the October and extra, because this is my problem with these entire things. And I must put on record, and I still have the conversation. And I told a gentleman who I consider to be one of my adopted fathers, like, this is how you get in trouble, because Mr. Chris Richardson was on the show with him, and I said what I said to Chris, because you can't make these statements and think that people aren't going to hold you accountable for those things. So when I called the show, I was driving, I pulled off the road, and I called the show, and I said, it's not made public yet, and that is on me. I didn't put out a press release. I got the instructions. I didn't put out a press release. I was traveling among other things. I'm back. I'm trying to get stuff. And then they're going on here and say they have no chair. And I was like, no, there has a chair. Just trying to correct that.
Yeah.
Just share a little information. And then they're going to go on to say, oh, I fire Kennedy. How you can say that on air?
so we're gonna see. This is where I kind of stick a pin.
Yeah, let's leave that.
Stick up. No, and I'll say this. Stick a pin, and reverse to some previous episodes where the former chair,
Would have said that he's
in his own words,
in that chair right there.
that very chair.
Yeah.
We're gonna stick a pin and just revert to that episode, and in his own words, we have clarity on that.
Yes, leave that there. Okay,
Right
good.
there.
All right, so we're back to water and we're back to the
But he did resign.
He did resign.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
I mean, I have.
But he said that he would. He said there's
Well, he did
competency.
resign, and I have that in writing.
Okay,
from him.
good.
Yes.
Because they said that I fired him. But that's a different story. But he did point to the competency sitting right here to take up the mantle and go forward. He did from that very chair.
Yeah.
That would be his recommendation. And he said that he did
Geneva
not.
was the deputy chair.
There was a
and
deputy chair. And he said,
Naturally,
of course.
if she accepted that she would continue, then she became the chair.
And I have no
Yeah.
qualms. I have no
and
problem.
that was approved in executive council.
In executive council,
right.
not on the side of the road when Ivan pulled off to send some information. Just
You
to
got
get
a lot of power.
Tell me about the premier. I did not know that. But for the parties, I pulled off right by Anglic. Power. I got a power.
Is that solar power?
Hopefully not the fuel surcharge, because I think where you're going. with
That's
that,
where I'm going with the fuel surcharge.
just to bring it back
Yes.
there.
So I have a concern, and I think it's a legitimate concern.
Yes.
I don't think, and I'm not speaking. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. But I'm not sure that everyone understands the impact of this renewable energy debate. Here's why I say this. There are a lot of companies out there wanting providing renewable energy, but anyone doing their due diligence would not just go on a company's website.
No.
They're going to go in the media. They're going to check for articles. Every week there's something in the Anguillian about renewable energy in Anglican, in making it seem like government is at war with Anglican renewable energy. Outside of that, Anglic is continuing, for good reason or not, to move the needle where the fuel surcharge is concerned. And a number of persons are taking it upon themselves to go to renewable energy for themselves.
Yes. Including the big facilities.
That's what I'm getting at
Right.
now, including our hotels and
Right.
some major supermarkets and the like.
And I
Right.
see why that I am going to exclude myself from this one.
Yeah, I don't need you this long time. But so we have one big mess, one big PR mess that we are fueling because it's good radio topic. It's good
Right.
bar room topic. Is the barbershop talk. And I realize that we live in a global village and our borders are porous, and everything Mr. Keith Stonegrave touched on responsible journalism. Everything out there is that fast. You have major clients looking to come off the grid.
Right.
Legislatively, I don't think there's anything that can stop them.
No. However, Anglec has a monopoly on power generation in Anguilla. So they can only use it as backup.
They could only use it as backup.
That's correct.
And they can stay with it.
Which means that they can't disconnect from the grid.
They can't connect. They can't disconnect from the grid.
Which is funny. I'll tell you why.
There's a loophole everywhere.
No, but I'll tell you why this is funny.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't pay my bill, I get disconnected.
Right.
So I can't disconnect, but you can disconnect me. But just putting that there.
But can I as I'm the new owner of Ivan's Charming Escape in Little Harbor. I bought the building from Acidco. I renovated Cinnamon Reef. I have to take on Anglec, but I have solar panels and all those nice flat roofs. I'm energy efficient. Every day my engineering department say we have to test something at my facility, and they turn off Anglec or we switch over because we need. What's gonna stop me from doing that?
Nobody.
Okay,
And
good.
nothing.
Nobody and nothing. Carrying on. That's the big
That's
profit
right.
is. You have individual families.
So
and
now who has to pay Anglec's bill? Because now Anglec still got to get paid for all the power they're generating.
Yeah, best
so they're
believe it.
coming back to the households to pay, right?
And then the rates are gonna go up because those diesel big boys down here,
Still gulping.
they still gulping,
Yep,
and they operate on efficiency in terms of their load management.
Right.
Okay, well, I ain't done yet. Added to that, you have persons willing to take up the 100% financing from the National Commercial Bank of Anguilla for renewable energy to put renewable energy on their homes, solar panels, get their batteries, $30,000. They prefer to pay a $30,000 loan at $800 a month for the next 6, 10, 20, 15 years, whatever they get it for, hypothetically speaking,
Right.
than to pay Anglec $1,500 a month.
Right.
But here comes Anglec, Mr. Premier, and Anglec is saying, no, we have to go towards renewable energy. We have to go towards renewable. You're singing this song like the symbol in a marching band, and we're doing this every single day. And I had a conversation with somebody that I respect recently, and I asked him a few questions. I'm going to ask these same questions of you, Mr. Premier. Is government standing in the way of Anglec going towards renewable energy?
No.
Government is not. We get out of the way. Government favors a power purchase agreement, correct?
Correct.
Anglec says they want to do it themselves. I asked somebody who said that they're all for Anglec doing it themselves. And I'm going to ask you, Mr. Premier, you, Miss Gleneva Hodge, now in your capacity as just Gleneva Hodge, not WCA chairperson.
Okay.
Anglec has to buy a certain number of poles. I don't know if it's still the case, so I hope I'm not misquoting. Every year, because we live on the hurricane belt, so they have to budget for that.
Right.
Poles, replacement poles if we get a storm. We know what happened with the solar farm with Hurricane Irma.
That's right.
We never saw it again.
Wiped out.
Clean.
Yeah.
Oh, there are better ways to put them down now, the angles and everything. They're still responsible and they can be damaged. So every year, we will no longer have to account for poles, but we'd have to account for solar panels, and they're talking about wind as well. So we're going to have to account for some wind turbines. Then we have to account for the training of persons and the specialists responsible for these fields. So if you are taking on all this added debt, and you are losing clients because people have had enough of you, and you can't necessarily right now attract the investment or go towards getting it done because of what's permeating out there in the media, how is the cost going to go down?
I don't see it. Because especially if you're doing it in a phased manner.
That's
If you're
another
doing-
thing, because then you're not
because
getting off from the fossil fuels at all.
Exactly. You still got to keep those engines
Those
running.
engines still got to turn.
That's right.
Then we didn't even touch batteries.
Right.
We didn't even touch batteries because it's not just to build a solar farm.
Right.
We're not gonna be Antigua. My brother, I saw my brother on my way back, and he gave me the biggest joke. He told me like, the solar farms up there big and pretty, but where they say house empty, nothing is in there. They don't have any batteries, and some of the farms aren't even hooked up.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of political
Right.
talk that's
Yeah.
going on there. But we didn't even touch batteries.
Right.
We didn't even honestly touch the integration into the system.
Right.
And I remember when Anglec went to it the first time, and we were having all these problems with the dip in power, and they didn't, like, just the cloud cover. There's a lot to go into it.
Yes.
Why are we, honestly and truly, Premier, why are we not taking a serious look at a PPA? Because when you do that, they're responsible.
Definitely.
They have a duty of responsibility to provide power at this cost
That's right.
all the time.
That's correct.
So
That's correct.
why?
And they have to do the maintenance.
And they have to do the maintenance.
upgrades. And the PUC can regulate what the cost is.
So what is the big fight?
So, let that be a rhetorical question.
You want it to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'm mindful we started this episode.
Oh wow, that's the time? I didn't realize.
I mean, we started this episode talking about time and being respectful of our radio partners.
Yes.
Yes, I
you
didn't
did.
realize that it's past the
Yes,
hour.
we have.
You're a responsible person.
It's horse show.
But I just wanted to say there's a saying out there,
Mhm.
and you know, every time that I think about not being responsible and going down a certain road, my mom usually says, "Do not cut off your nose to spite your face." And on that note, Ivan.
Premier, I'll give you the final word. I don't know if you want to touch anything that was said, but there's a lot happening. This has been 2 excellent episodes back to back. You'll definitely be back. I know we're going into
Budget
the next budget season,
Yes.
and the house is starting its next sessions, sitting up sessions. Anything that you want to tell us while we close?
Yes, certainly. We have a very robust legislative agenda. You know, the Minister for Infrastructure and Tourism, he wants to put in, the vehicle traffic, the seat belts and
the
child
DUIs,
restraints,
yes, all that stuff.
driving under the influence, all that legislation. He wants to bring in the
vanity
Minister for
plates.
Home Affairs. He wants to bring in the minimum wage.
Yes.
Some amendments to the Labor Relations Act,
Yes.
some Immigration and Passport Act amendments.
Yes.
We got the Minister for the Environment, looking at, we want to make sure that we come up with a robust way of dealing with Anguilla.
Mm-hmm.
And so the policies, we got to make those strong, and then you got to get the legislation to do
Support
it. So just want to say that it's going to be strong legislative agenda this year. We've already alerted the Attorney General's chambers, the
Yes.
drafters, that there's going to be a lot of work to do. Executive Council knows what our priorities are, and so we move in that direction.
Yes.
I just want to say to the people of Anguilla that, the budget kind of shows the priorities that we have for us as a people.
Mhm.
That the well-being of the people of Anguilla is what motivates me to get up every day, to go to work, and try to do what I can for the people that raised me, that sent me away to
Yes.
school, that then allowed me to develop as a person, gave me the self-esteem and the confidence that I have, and that I could come back home and represent the people of Anguilla and to do the best for the people. And that's what I'm here for. I'm not here to cut any corners. I'm not here to make myself look good.
Right.
I want to make sure that the people are taken care of. And that's what, as a doctor, that's, what I, the oath that I took was that I would make sure that the well-being of the people was preserved, protected, and progressed.
Awesome.
So I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Oh,
This is a
my
great
pleasure.
show that Gleneva has.
Yes.
You as the sidekick.
Yes.
I see that.
I'm her Robin.
Yes. So, but again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to the people of Anguilla, to speak with you. And I must say that, the potential here is awesome.
Thank
you very much.
Premier.
Thank you for being here. And Ivan, Over and out to you.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's been another excellent episode of Progress Report. Remember, you can tune into your favorite radio station. Call them up if you need a copy. Or you can download all the major streaming platforms, including YouTube. We have the episodes there. It's distributed on not Instagram,
Facebook.
WhatsApp, Facebook. It's everywhere. There's a quote. I have to find this quote. Geneva, please permit me to find this quote because I posted it the other day and it talks about information. Oh man, I can't find it, but it says
you will definitely have it for next.
I'll
episode.
definitely have it for next time. But it talks about the amount of information that's out there. Continue to get your information from a reputable source.
That's
Continue
right.
to make sure that when you speak, you're speaking on the facts, and continue to make sure that you stay tuned to Progress Report, updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. Thank you.